everybody. My name is Raleigh Butler. I'm a senior here at UT, and today I will be interviewing Parker Story, also a senior here at UT. So, Parker, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. So, we were actually on a study abroad trip together in fall of 2015 in Nantes, France. That's in the northwest region. And yeah, so Parker, could you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Yeah, it was great. I actually started applying about a year before that, and I had trouble really deciding on where to go and just kind of landed on that one randomly. The program seemed really cool, so got accepted, started packing and going, and I loved the city. I think it was had the feel of a big city while also the intimacy of like a small environment, which I liked. And I was in a program that was just for people learning French as a foreign language, so I got to interact with a lot of people from different countries, Mexico, Venezuela, Japan, China, and so that was a great international experience while also being abroad.
And you're a French major, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And so would you say that the language skills you learned while abroad has helped you in your major?
Oh, for sure. I think in two ways. One, I got a lot of credit for it, which was helpful. And then two, I mean, you can't put a price on like learning the language where it was originated and the area it was from, and learning it from people who speak it natively and whose it's their first language, and having their advice and helping you with pronunciation is just so helpful. And it definitely improved my French a lot, both with vocabulary and pronunciation.
So I remember when I was in France, one of the things that surprised me the most was the constricted hours of shops and the navigating the paperwork system and all of that. What were your experiences?
I felt the same thing. And the thing that surprised me the most was how much it bothered me. I didn't think that I would be like so aggravated with as much as I was. And I think that was an experience in like really opening your mind, because before going, I was like, okay, it's going to be different and I need to adjust for that. But I didn't think I knew how much it would be different, and that was one of the things, like the constricted hours of when you could go, the bureaucracy over there, like trying to get anything done, like trying to get a student ID. I was surprised at how much, like, I was so used to convenience in America and how hard it was for me to let that go. I thought that'd be something easy for me to do because I've always considered myself to be like an open-minded person. And I was surprised at how hard it was for me to get over the conveniences that we're used to here, because it's so not like that over there when it comes to like bureaucracy and like getting things done.
So since it was a study abroad program and you were in a very different school system, different expectations, how did you approach that? What was different for you? I know you mentioned the earflow program.
Right. So what was different was there wasn't a lot of homework, and that was an adjustment because here I think we're so used to getting like a lot of homework. There's a lot of hours spent outside the classroom studying and like almost teaching yourself a material, whereas there's a more heavy focus on in the classroom and what you learn there. And so that was a big adjustment to make, was getting back to the dorm or getting outside of class and being like, wow, I don't have anything to do right now, which is awesome because that gives you more time to like actually experience the culture and interact with the different people and go see different places and do fun stuff. And then on the flip side of that, like having a lot more expectations on what's happening in the class learning. I mean, having more like activities and interacting in group projects. In the Earflow program, that was my experience. It was a small group and we had every single class together for 18 hours a week. And we were very busy in those 18 hours, and we had to get to know each other and work with each other. And I think that was what was one of the most awesome things about the experience, was getting to know people from 5, 10 different countries so intimately and have to like finish the program together. We all got our B2 certificate together, which is really cool.
So you mentioned like exploring the town in your free time, et cetera, et cetera. I know for me, like that was a good chance for me to talk to some of the natives, build on my the language skills that I had. What kind of things did you like to do?
A lot of what I like to do is just go to the different places in the city square or like look at the architecture. I mean, me and Nia, we would go a lot to just like walk around and look at the different buildings like Place de Buffet, and go to the castle that was there in the middle of the city and just explore the architecture. We didn't really spend a lot of time talking to different people, which is something I wish I would have done more, because I think that's really how you learn, is talking and making friends. But we just really loved seeing the architecture, and because there's so much history in like every place you walk, which is something so interesting. So I loved going to an area and then later looking it up and seeing that something like cool happened there and it's historically relevant. And just last semester I did a presentation on the chateau in the city.
Cool.
Yeah.
With regards to like approaching the native French people in town when you're ordering coffee, et cetera, how was that? How long did it take you to get used to using French on a daily basis?
It took me a while. There was the first couple of weeks I was there, I was still saying please and thank you like that in English. And it took me a while to get used to switching to the French and ordering in French and learning new vocabulary that way, like how to say takeout was something I never knew how to say but learned while I was there. And then what's funny is I got so used to saying it that it was hard for me to then transition back when I came back. I got so used to saying merci and s'il vous plaît that it was hard to go back to please and thank you back in America. So it's so funny, like those pleasantries, they get so like, because you use them every day with everything you do, so it's so hard to get out of that habit of using them.
I know for me, like in my classes, I could understand the professors extremely well because they always spoke that traditional official standard French. But then when it came to speaking with other French people that had frequently come from all over the country, their accents weren't necessarily that neutral accent. It could be from Marseille, from the German region, from wherever, and getting used to that wide variety. Yeah, it took me also a couple weeks to figure out what people were saying.
Right. I think it's easier too to understand teachers, especially because they're in an academic environment, so they're using that, like you said, the most standard French that there is, and speaking plainly and even slowly, especially in the earflow program. Like they were very aware that French we were not all there yet. We weren't fluent at all. We were trying to get there. So they spoke very clearly and slowly, and I think that was what helped, because they were still native and they still taught us how to say things correctly, but they slowed down for us so we could understand them.
That's good. So were your professors all from Nantes or from France, or did they come from all over the world like the students did?
Most of my teachers were from Nantes, I believe. There was one teacher I had, she was actually from Venezuela.
So when you're in France, you're obviously closer to a slew of other European countries. Is there anywhere in France that you particularly liked, any other country?
You know what's sad? I didn't actually go to any other country while I was there. I wanted to, but I just wanted to really explore France while I was there.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
I did the same thing.
Right. So the first place I went to outside of Nantes was Bordeaux, and that was an amazing experience, but it was like actually really hard, like trying to plan everything, like trying to get the bus ticket to go, and then when you get to the bus, learning the new tram system because we'd gotten so used to the one in Nantes. And then I love the city though; it was so beautiful. And then I went to Paris. I went to Paris a lot actually. I went for our fall break, and then a couple other random weekends, and I think that's where I spent the most of my time outside of Nantes, because I didn't really travel too much. I just went to Bordeaux and Paris, I think, were the only two places I went.
So if you haven't studied abroad before, if you haven't done much independent traveling before, figuring out how to set up or how to navigate the bus schedules, the tram schedules, etc., it's a very, very steep learning curve.
Yes.
It takes a lot of time and energy to investigate all those opportunities.
Right. Like trying to figure out the Metro Pass in Nantes, like trying to get the ticket to ride for a year or a month. Like you can buy those at the stand, or you can go to the office. And if you go to the office, it's a lot harder to deal with it. But if you want the year pass, like we got at the time, you had to go there. And the same thing in Bordeaux, except it wasn't as helpful because there wasn't an office that we could go to. It was just the thing, and we got the wrong tickets, and how it goes.
How it goes.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were in Paris, which brings me to my next question. The Paris attacks obviously happened while we were over there. What was your experience with all that? Because you were in Paris at the time, if I remember correctly.
I was, yeah, and that was probably one of the most weird, like, out-of-body experiences I've had, because it was so strange. I was there, my cousin, she actually came to visit, and so we were staying in Paris, and we had just been by the area, the Notre Dame, and then late in the evening, and then we went to the Eiffel Tower, and then we went back to our hostel. And as soon as we got back to the hostel, I saw in a group message that someone said that there was a shooting in Paris, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. That's something you not expect. But at the time, I thought it was just like an isolated incident. And then I started seeing like comments because I posted a photo
Right.
with my cousin, and I started seeing comments, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess. That's where they're thinking about the shooting, but yeah, I'm fine." And then I go to bed, and then I wake up a few hours later with my phone ringing, and it was my mom calling me.
From abroad.
Yeah. And she was asking like, "Are you okay? What's happening?" And I was like, "I have no idea what's happening. I'm fine." And I was like, "But yeah, I'm fine." So then I go and like, because we had Wi-Fi, and I started looking up and seeing like what was actually happening, and then I heard police sirens at the same time, like going by and going to the location, and it just felt so weird to like not know the severity of it.
I ignored the alerts at first. I got a BBC banner up on my phone that said shooting in Paris, and shootings happen all the time. It's sad that we're so desensitized to it, but I just ignored it.
Right.
Okay, I can't do anything. And then I got a message from my friend that 30 seconds later, "Are you okay?" Another one, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And then I realized, I looked it up, yeah. Tons of people have died. There are bombings all over the place.
It was so weird to be almost detached, but there. It was weird. And then to realize like how tragic it was awful that someone could do that. And then it was scary to think of had things worked out differently, because we went by that place earlier. Like had we went by there a few hours earlier, what would have happened? And that was what was the scariest thought for me, and I think a lot for my family too, is that was hard for them dealing with, like, and they wanted me to like come home then, and I was like, I can't, like, because they closed the tram like that night, and then they closed the borders a little bit for that night too, so there was like no leaving. That wasn't an option, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happens if I get to a point where I do want to leave and I can't? But then I think kind of what helped me get out of that was like seeing how the French reacted to it, and like realizing that like they weren't going to let fear like bring them down. They weren't going to live out of fear. They weren't going to change their daily activities out of fear. And I think that was what was so motivating, and that's what helped the next day, because the next day was so weird. We stayed in a hostel, and we only left to do like laundry and go get something to eat, but we saw the city, like, and we saw on the news like people gathering and people going out, and even though the president said, please don't leave your house, like, don't go, the French said, no, like, we're not going to let them win. If we act out of fear, then that's them winning. So to see that like attitude is what really motivated me and like made me feel more comfortable being there, because I was like, I can't make decisions out of fear. I
felt that too, that fraternité, if you will, the fraternity of the French people, the idea that this has happened, there's nothing we can do about it, we're just going to take care of those who are injured, try to make sure that everyone else is okay, is safe, show support for the family. I don't know what you saw in person, but I remember seeing videos everywhere of people laying flowers, of people having vigils immediately afterwards that left their homes to do such a thing, even if they were in Paris, which I found really astounding.
Right. They closed down a lot of the monuments that next day, but you still saw people gathering at Notre Dame. They had a service there the next night. And Place de la République, there was another gathering there with tons of media coverage and people going there. And it was commented on the time in the news how like amazing it was that people were not listening to the orders of the president to stay in your home, to not go out. But in every interview that I saw, it was that same thing. Like, if we stay in our homes, that's what they wanted. They did this to bring fear into this country, into our homes, and they wanted us to stay in. So to fight that is to come out with love and joy and being there for each other, and that's what I got out of it.
I remember seeing a video. There was a young boy that said, Papa, we're going to have to leave now. There are bad guys in our home. And he said, no, we don't give in to fear, we bring flowers, or something to that effect. I saw that too, yeah. And I thought that video was a really good representation of how the French people were dealing with the crisis at that moment. We're not going to give in. We're not going to fight back even. We're just going to respond with flowers. And yeah, I thought that was cool.
Me too.
So how did you end up leaving Paris if everything was shut down?
Well, they only closed. I think the borders remained closed for the shortest amount of time. I think it was just through the night into like the middle of the next day, the borders of France, and then the travel, the planes. They canceled a lot of plane rides. Like so, the transportation was kind of dodgy, and the metro was shut down for a little bit too. So I think if I remember, the attacks happened on a Friday. We stayed there for Saturday, and I had a train ticket to come back on Sunday.
Right.
My cousin, she had actually, and her friend had a train ticket to go to Belgium afterwards. And if you remember, that's where they went afterwards, or that's where the police went to look for the alleged attackers.
Right.
And so she changed her train ticket to ride back to Nantes with me. And so that's what we did.
Okay.
Luckily, there was no issue with the metro or the trains in and out of Paris on Sunday. It was interesting, though, when we went to the train station, as soon as we walked in, all you saw was guards. There was guards with guns around, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so, it's intimidating to see, like, because when I came in the same train station just a few days earlier, and I, like, didn't even think about anything. There didn't seem to be anything different. And then leaving just 2 days later, it was packed in every, like, they were just circling and walking around. And I mean, it's good to know that they were there for protection, but it just goes to show, like, in just how short amount of time, how so much can change. And you could feel the tension in the city and in the train station. Like, you could just feel it.
So, having been to France, having gained all of this knowledge of the French language, all these experiences, you're back here now at UT, you're a senior. What would you like to do?
It's funny, I think all those experiences have, like, taken me out of the field of going directly, I'm going to be a French teacher or a translator. I'm not feeling that as much. I just know that I want to work, like, with different people. You know, I want to work with people from different cultures. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like in a job. I have an internship in HR, and so I've been working with diversity research, and I think that is an interesting field to study. I don't know exactly. Really cool. Yeah, so I don't know what it's going to turn into as a career or as a job after May, but I just know that I want to use, like, my international experience with working with different people and having to adapt to a different culture. I think that can be useful in some way. Yeah, so even if I don't necessarily follow, like, using explicitly French and becoming a French professor or doing anything like that, I think the international experience that I gained will help shape my career in whatever form it is.
And knowing another language is helpful no matter what you do.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the process of learning a language opens your brain up to, like, so many things. That's really cool.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
It was really interesting to hear another perspective during that same time period, that same study abroad experience. It's been really, really cool to talk through all this. And thank you for watching. This has been Student Spotlight. We hope to do more of these in the future, where we interview students from around campus and get their perspective on various issues. Thank you.